Okay.
All right, welcome to our weekly New Global Media Talk Show. Today is September 22nd, 2024. Today we have our guest, Madi Jorbateh, and he's a human rights activist as well, and then he's also an educator. Madi, you're welcome to the show, and I have my co-host here, Sam Ceesay. Sam, welcome.
Thank you.
So, Madi, I know, we've been, there's a lot of things going on in the Gambia, and you've been in the forefront of the struggle to see that Gambia, transitional justice, occurs, and then also the draft constitution, kind of favor the citizens and a lot more things. We have also seen you on Tangara's case and many other things that emerge in the country. And you have a lot of support, and at the same time, you have critics also who are also going after you. So that is the nature of the job. I mean, if you are there for the voiceless, of course, some people would like it, some people would not. And whoever it goes against, those people would also, say something else. And right now, we just had something that maybe the hospital situation in the state house, which Pastor Bajau made a statement on, and then the government tried to clarify it. There's a lot of things happening in the Gambia, and then we need people who can speak up for the voiceless. So thank you so much for doing that. And then if I may ask you before you go into any of this, who is Madi Jorbateh?
Well, I've avoided programs, these personality featuring programs, because I tell folks I'm just one of the 2.4 million. Now that they said our population is 2.4 million. But yeah, I mean, I always say I'm just a citizen, who wants to fulfill his citizenship duty and rights. Yeah, but born in Boraba certainly, and I live in Cambridge. So yeah, this is what Madi is. Just one ordinary person in the Gambia.
Thank you for that. I know, definitely you might not know, but you really consider a heavyweight, because anytime anything comes from you, it makes a news headline. So that is something that we are thankful of, and you should be thankful of. But thank you for playing it like a simple.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So what do you think about the transitional justice? Victims, some of them passed away already. They haven't seen justice. A lot of things are undone, and then things being put under the carpet for almost 7 to 8 years now. So what is your thought process on that? Do you think justice will ever be served?
Yeah, certainly, because I think in the long run we will get justice. His Habre took 25 years hiding in Senegal, and eventually justice came, and we know of many kind of stories like that. But it's a difficult subject to talk about in the Gambia. I have mixed feelings. Sometimes you are made to have hope, and then sometimes you are made to be frustrated.
Yep.
If you and it's difficult to deal with, because of all I believe we could have had obtained the objectives of transitional justice within the first 3 years of this government, if they were really serious and committed to it. Yes, I think we have the means, we have the capacity to have set up a TRRC and implement its recommendations. Whether it is about prosecutions, a tribunal, we would have set up our own tribunal. Since then, we could have changed the new constitution, had a new constitution by now. We should have been able to do the necessary legal institutional reforms by now. We should have embarked on a lot of reconciliatory moves, set up necessary institutions, and but even address some of those socio-cultural issues that impact on our governance and our development in a positive way. So there are many, ways we could have, registered success, actually. But the government has decided to take a very gradual, step, it's like wait and see what happens. Yes, and so it
is muted.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I muted myself.
Yeah.
Yes, I just muted. So we could have gone to a place where we would have really registered huge success. But now we are in this situation. As I said, it's a difficult thing to talk about because they will always tell you, but we have enacted these laws, like the Victims Reparation Act is there, the special mechanisms, special, mechanisms act is there, the Special Prosecutors Act is there, that we are talking with ECOWAS, and that meetings are taking place. Two, you realize that you have all these enablers in all these institutions, from cabinet to parliament to other strategic institutions. And then, of course, some victims are already dying, they have died. And so, you see certain political moves, the government forming alliance with APRC, and, and so at the end of the day, you wonder, even if you're going to have transitional justice in any way, would it be qualitative, really, something that we deserve? Or would it be some kind of a compromised, a thing that at the end of the day, it doesn't fundamentally change our society? And part of that change means it doesn't address the deep-rooted, injustices, that exist in this society. Because, the dictatorship is not just about the killings and the tortures and the tampering with the laws and so on, but it has also cultivated a certain mindset, a certain attitude of corruption, of abuse, of malpractices, not just sector, in our wider civil society, in our communities. And so a lot of injustices have been done, and that has created a sort of polarization and distrust between Gambians, which has taken dimension and so on. So all of this, for me, should have been addressed by our transitional justice process, so that we end up creating a truly independent society. I mean, a just, equal society. But unfortunately, the approach right now, as I said, it's a difficult thing to talk about, because it's like we are there, it's like we are not there. Yeah. So for me, that's how I see it. So sometimes I'm like, okay, let me give them benefit of the doubt and watch. Maybe something good will come out. But should it take us 10 years? Should it take us 15 years? Should it, should it take us even for 8 years already that we are at this point? No constitution, the atrocities, no accountability. If you can see all the accountability actions were taken outside of the Gambia, like the case of Usman Sonko in Switzerland, the case of Bailo in Germany, and now, the case of, Michael Correa in the US. And then, of course, there's one arrested in Scotland, I think Aliu Jeng, or more Raji Moore, I think that's the nickname. But then in the Gambia, except we say, okay, the case of Yankuba Toure, but then we still have, nothing is happening, because, of course, what you need for those things to happen is to set up a tribunal, and the tribunal is not here yet. And so, it doesn't give me hope or a lot of confidence. In one sense, I feel we will get to the tribunal, but then it's also about, okay, when are we going to get to the tribunal? And time is going. Yeah. So as I said, it's a difficult subject, really, to respond to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it means that maybe we would see justice, but it might not be some people might not witness this, some of the victims or victims' family, perhaps.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when we had the spokesperson of the government there the other day, he was saying something about they have things in place. Eventually it took Sierra Leone and other places some over 15 years or something to to actually deal with all these things. It could take time. So if it is something that is definitely, is going to happen at some point, perhaps it might not happen in this government, but other governments, the windows is open for if there other governments come in place to actually prosecute this. Is there something like that on the table? You are muted. You're muted. You are muted.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So I think the bottom line is we had dictatorship, and there's the TRC report and other reports. Is for this current government to implement. But if they don't, the next government also has the obligation to implement the TRC reports. Because things happen, and we definitely need to change our society. But that doesn't help us as a people, because what we want really, in fact, for me, it is more not about prosecuting, some individuals, all right, which is part of it. But for me, the big thing, the fundamental thing really is, how do we create a whole new society of justice, of equality, of prosperity, that we make the government really an instrument of the people, a service to the people, a government that is transparent and accountable, and so on. So for me, that is what we need to have done, should be doing, should have achieved, all right, or should be on the path to achieve. Because the thing is, like I mentioned, he's in Habre and Chad, 25 years, okay, eventually he was sentenced, and one man was sentenced. He's in Habre. But if you go back to Chad today, it's fundamentally the dictatorship. It's still a corrupt society. It's still an impoverished society. It's still a society of, with a government that is incompetent, inefficient. So at the end of the day, yes, we have put Hissène Habré in jail. But what does it serve Chad?
Exactly.
Basically. So that at the end of the day, also in the Gambia, we can get Jammeh and sentence him to life. All right. We can sentence all these junglers. Usman Sonko is in a Swiss jail, getting better life there than most Gambians in their homes in the Gambia. What does that serve us when you come to think about it? Such that for me, the issue is, why is this country, look at our government, you find that it is even more corrupt today than under Jammeh. That it is even more inefficient, more incompetent, all right, today than under Jammeh. So, so I'm not excited about a tribunal, really, when you have all these conditions here, and no efforts being made to make a difference. And I think really, this is what we really need to think about. What do we want? And I think for people like me, that is our fight. That it is not just about that transitional justice in terms of a tribunal and prosecutions, but how do we make a fundamental break, detachment from that Jammeh
Sam, is it me?
Definitely, our political leadership is not interested. Yeah. You hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Yep.
I will let.
So I mean, yeah, you can go ahead. I think I've expressed as much as I could. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we understand. I think I understand before Sam comes in. The important things here is the change, the system change itself. That's what we're talking about. Then actually prosecuting is fine. That will make sure that the victims are they are at peace and all of that. But at the same time, if the system hasn't changed or we haven't stopped doing the same thing that we used to do at Drammeh's era, so it's the impact of the transition hasn't been made. I think that's what exactly Madi is talking about. So that is a point noted, right? Sam, you can come in. I think in that case, Madi, I would say then the government need to be accountable for that because they are the one in the driver's seat, and then they are the one who can push some of this agenda in our National Assembly. So if there is supposed to be any finger pointing, it has to be them who's supposed to actually make those enforcement. Yeah. So instead of talking about the tribunal, that's one thing. But as far as making sure the system is changed, corruption is to minimal. There's justice and corruption. There's just justice everywhere, and also we live in a decent life that we all fought for. That should be our leaders. That should be really spearheading that. But again, I will let Sam come in and you can come in again. Sam, go ahead.
Yep. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Jorbateh. Really, thank you. We appreciate you being here. Really appreciate all the hard work that you do in Gambia, sensitizing people, but at the same time, speaking your mind. It's very important. Every citizen, like you said earlier, every citizen has the right to come out and speak their mind and be able to stand up for our country. And that's very, very important. When I, looked at the TRRC, when TRRC was on those days, I've been watching, not watching really live. I didn't have time to watch live, but I watched the recorded videos of what actually transpired there. So the moment of truth for me was when Senator Sabali came on TRRC. Senator Sabali made a lot of revelations, and after those revelations, me as a person that want to follow the truth, and I've also in America here, I've been working in the human resource department. So my role has been justice, and let's speak the truth. Let's do the right thing for the right people. So that being the mindset that I have, as soon as Senator Sabali spoke in TRRC, the first thing I said, and I actually came out on my WhatsApp platform, Solutions for Gambia. I'm the founder of Solutions for Gambia. So I came on there and I said the government should really pull these people out of the system and put them on investigative suspension. We have a witness that came to TRRC, or several witnesses that came and all mentioned some names that are currently in those days, currently in the government, still in the system. I mean, I in my mind that should not have happened. I've been in a position where in the retail industry, in the human resource department, when I see in a retail department that they lost $50, I'm talking $50 or $100, just that simple. That when they get lost in somebody's shift, the first thing we do is we want to put that person on investigative suspension and investigate until you find the truth. Get all the facts and the evidences and determine if that person need to be terminated and held accountable for it, or no, it was actually not their fault, not that person, something else happened. I want to look at all the evidence. And so when a crime, especially of this magnitude happening in a country, and you have a TRRC in place and you have witnesses coming to testify and narrate everything that happened, the government should have pulled those people. There were certain military officials still in the system in those days that were in the system. They should have pulled them immediately. That's what real leaders do. You pull them out and say, since these are crimes that you've committed, even though TRRC is not a court of law, it's a commission. and you have real human beings that came out and testify, well, you may not know the truth yet. Yeah, you've got to, by law, you've got to give those people the benefit of the doubt and be able to defend themselves in the court of law. So what really should have happened is the government should have immediately pulled them off the system and put them on investigative suspension while they investigate, and then let the court hearing take the place, and then do the right thing for the people. You see, when we want to bring transitional justice and you want to bring justice, do the right thing for the people, you've got to be fair. You have to be fair. You have to treat people the way they need to be treated, and look at it from both sides. You have victims that are already dead. Okay, you have victims' families that are out there that have no place to go, nowhere to go. And survival is the key for them. Every day, what they even go and eat every day is a problem. Cost of living is high. So you want to look at things from that perspective. Look at things as if this was me, or if this was my brother that was killed, and the person that killed my brother is still out there, and it's still working for the government. How do you look at things? You, as a leader, we have to, our president needed to take the bold stand and say, pull all of these out of the system for investigative suspension. They can still get their salary, but they will not be working for us, for our government, until they go to the court of law and let the court decide their fate. At that point, that way you're doing the right thing for the people. And if we want change, what we call change, I mean, we've got to do something. We cannot continue with the old people and say we're going to change. What are we changing? We're not changing. We have the same people in the system that are going to operate the same way they know how to operate, right? So is to me, the government failed to do the right thing. They failed to do the right thing. Yes, things like this can take a while before they get resolved. They can take a number of years, but you've got to take the first steps first to show people and to let everyone know we're not playing anymore. If you do anything like this, you're in the service, and you do anything like this, injustice to people, you traumatizing people, you violating people's rights, and you're in the army, you better stop, because this is not going to continue here. We want to stop. We want to change. We want to change direction and bring Gambia together. That's what I expected to see, and it didn't happen. So I was disappointed. Thank you. I'll stop here for now.
Thank you, Sam, for that. We all gonna point finger at the government and National Assembly, but here, just to get to Madi's point, there are a lot of things packaged left. You know, we have the anti-corruption bill that came to the parliament. We don't know how far that is going. Has it been implemented? You know, is it working? Nobody is even following up. You know, Gambians, we are good at creating good ideas, but we are not good at implementing them or kind of evaluating them. Every 3 months, you're supposed to, if a law is put into place or an idea, you're supposed to go and find out, investigate, and see how impactful it is. You know, you audit the effort and see if it is working, what results has been covered, what hasn't been uncovered, so that you can make some tweak to it. But we don't do that. You know, like, we put stuff out there, and then we just look at it. If it works, nobody cares. Just for the National Assembly to say we pass it. So that's what is the main problem in the Gambia. We don't have anybody in command, in charge, who is gonna be making sure things are implemented and follow up. And then those who are not doing it got fired, or they pay. You know, in an awful way. So that is number one. Number two, look at the draft constitution, which is we're coming at. You know, the draft constitution what had happened to it? It got tweaked again. You know, this time around, the government brought something with all the false allegations that they went to Abuja, they had a meeting, you know, the political party agreed on something, and now they cooked it up, and they take out things that they don't like, and they leave the others that they like, and then, you know, bring that to us. So now, where are we in the crossroad? You know, should we accept this constitution or not? The question is, we should accept a constitution. I mean, the answer to the question is we should accept a constitution, but which form? So now the National Assembly, the request is for the National Assembly to go and see what they can adjust there. And this is all, you know, kind of the reform, you know, agenda that we have. this is all delaying everything. Madi is saying that the fact of the matter is there is nothing in place, that will govern us in a way that we need to be governed. Like the prosecuting, TRRC, like perpetrators is one thing, the perpetrators in there, but the most important thing is how do we live, so that these things don't happen again, and then in a manner that Gambian people deserve. So I think some of these things like anti-corruption bill, draft constitution that need to be passed with term limits and other, important accountability clause, those things are things that need to be in place. And then Madi, I'm just gonna give you this opportunity to see what we need to do as a country to move forward, so that we don't have to stay in the fence. UDP is saying, oh, if something is removed, you're not gonna, agree to it. MPP is saying, another thing, and then we are in the crossroad.
Thank you. I think I'll start with Sam's comments. And I can agree more with him. But Sam, what that would require is, and of course, all the way to this draft constitution, is political will. And I think that is what we lacked from the very beginning: political will, the commitment to do the right, for your people, for yourselves, and then to stick by it and being honest to it, all the way. And we can see that Barrow in his 2026 manifesto and the coalition leaders in the MOU, they laid out very well what the problem of the Gambia was. So they know where the Gambia was at that time. And so in their MOU and manifesto, they have also laid out very well what needs to be done. And they have, put in place bulleted actions, But then when we got to 2017, individually and collectively, one can see how each one of them and every one of them, abandoned their responsibilities, in their various ways until we have where we are. And so part of that political will would have been, like you said, in terms of the TRRC, officials that are named, they are suspended until, their names are cleared. And I remember myself making an article on that at that time, so that somebody like Tangara was one person that you want to suspend at that time, because he was mentioned by the president of the Gambia Press Union, Netafa Ceesay, in her testimony, that Tangara was sent by Drammeh to Mali to seek her extradition. All right. Sometime 2011, 2012. And for me, to be mentioned like that, it is important, then he was in the government as a foreign minister, for the government to say, look, you need to clear this, really, because that was the dictatorship. That is how the dictatorship was enabled, by officials, particularly those in the cabinet like Tangara, maintaining that system, performing functions that would maintain that system. And so, but as I said, that political will was lacking. And so since 2017, we are seeing a situation where, as I said, sometimes it's difficult to respond to it, because they will tell you, but we have these laws, we have these institutions. But, you have a national human rights institution, which is positive. But that should also require that the entire government act according to human rights principles and standards, so that you would not have a human rights body that you create, and at the same time, you are having the police arbitrarily arresting people for their opinions. That is a contradiction. Yes, you set up there's an anti-corruption law. They are yet to set up an anti-corruption body, for example. But then at the same time, you are having corruption being exposed by the Auditor General, by investigative journalists, by government's own commissions, and you don't prosecute those people. You don't make those changes. People mentioned in corrupt activities, like say Hamad Ba, you go and promote them or send them to another ministry, or some officials, you send them to the foreign service.
Yep.
You know, instead of prosecuting them or dismissing them for their corruption or being mentioned, you know, to investigate them. Now, at the same time, we have a law called Access to Information Act, which is intended to give citizens access to information, public information.
Right.
But in that act, there's a whole provision about proactive disclosure, that the government, at the minimum, there are some information that you need to supply to Gambians without being asked for it. Now, you sit here, that law was kept since 2021, but until now, there are reports, documents, information that government should give to people, and they don't give it. So, for example, the president signed a performance contract with SOE since 2 years ago. Now, you would expect that that performance contract is a public document.
Yeah.
According to the Access to Information Act, that document should be proactively shared. You should go to the State House website or, you know, I mean, the Ministry of Finance website, and you see that document there being shared. But until now, that document is nowhere to be seen. And the many, many examples are there. So when you look at that, you can see something that tells you, okay, this is progress. But then you look at the other side, you realize that everything is done against that progress. So at the end of the day, where do we go? I mean, how do we go forward? We are taking one step forward, and then we take two steps back. All right. So, I mean, so that when we get to this point about the new constitution, it's the same. They have said that in their manifesto, all right? And we saw how they set up the CRC, Constitutional Review Commission, in 2018. They did a fantastic job, submit their report. But then, you know, you go and kill that draft constitution for selfish reasons, basically, because the idea of a retroactive clause is unfounded. Because anyone who understands law or human rights, so that you have an idea of what is retroactive, you know, well, the concept of retroactive clause or, you know, effect, you realize that that doesn't apply, you know, in this matter, all right? Because it is not like the president is being denied any right. He has any vested right, and that right is now being taken away. He was elected 2017 to 2021. The draft constitution did not take that away from you, did not take that mandate from you. So he enjoyed the full mandate of 2017 to 2021. Yeah. And that is the only claim he can make. He cannot make a claim to 2022 to 2026. He cannot make a claim to 2026 to 2031 and so on. So when we say it's retroactive, it is not retroactive at all. But then they went to kill it. And now they are taking an approach, which is also, as I said, trying to kill progress, because the cabinet has no legal authority, or it has no mandate, political mandate, to write a constitution for a country.
Exactly.
Right? The parliament has no mandate to write a constitution for a country. The people of the country are the only people who can write a constitution for themselves. Now, if we are in a situation where, you know, as a civilized society, we have structures like the cabinet or the executive and the legislature, your job is, how do you create the space, the environment, the mechanisms to enable the people themselves to write their own constitution?
Yeah.
It is not for you to write it. So instead of, you know, asking about the way forward, the way forward is Barrow should not have gone to draft his own papers and call it a draft constitution out of the 2020 draft, and then gazette that, and then you want to send that to the National Assembly. Now, if you do that, one, you are showing that you have captured the right of the people to write their constitution and arrogate it to yourself, all right? And then you go further to give that right or duty of the people and hand it over to the National Assembly to do for themselves. So what that is going to happen is, it means you have captured, you know, the rights and duties of the people to do a function that is not your job. That is the job of the people. And so our constitution, it means, has been captured. So that when you take it in the National Assembly, it is now going to be a matter between political parties, between politicians, between the executive and the legislature, capturing what does not belong to them. You know, that constitution belongs to the people. So it should come to the people and not to parliament, not to the executive, not to political parties. So that at the end of the day, what you are going to create is UDP says we will not accept this, NPP says we will accept this, NRP stand there, do I say this, and so on. And political parties talking about something that belongs to the people, that should go to the people, but political parties capture it. And when political parties capture it, what they are doing is they are crafting their own party and individual interest, or denying the interest of another party or individual. So meaning our public property, which is our constitution, has now been hijacked and put on a table by political actors, each with a knife, to see how to cut their portions from it. I mean, that is the greatest disservice and disrespect that Barrow and this government are subjecting Gambians to. So that the way forward should have been that Barrow, after having, disrespectfully and, I mean, scandalously betrayed the people by allowing or making the 2020 draft to fail, what you should have done now is to go back to that, 2020 draft, after all the crisis, all the mess you have created, to go back to that draft, create a, with the parliament, go and constitute a constituent assembly, all right? A body that would comprise a certain number of Gambians from all walks of, across the Gambian society. You can have representatives from the youth, from women, persons with disabilities, farmers, teachers, all right, even from political parties, even from National Assembly, even from cabinet, and so on. But a representative body, religious communities, Christians, Muslims, and so on, 50 people, 100 people, 200 people, so that that constituent assembly now will be representative of the whole Gambian society, all right, to look at the 2020 draft and debate it, all right, review it, to deal with all the issues that are there, and until they get to a consensus. So that when they really get to a consensus, you can now bring that final draft from that constituent assembly and submit it to the parliament, for the parliament to forward it to the IEC, for the IEC to conduct a referendum for us, and the people decide. Because when you see, having passed it through the constituent assembly, you reduce all the tension and the disagreements, because Christian Council is there, Muslims, Islamic Council is there, youths are there, and everyone is there. And if they all agree, at least they are representatives or following or communities may tend to agree with that as well, so that you will limit or reduce any disagreements, and so it will be very easy for the referendum for it to pass. All right. Now, this requires political will. It requires honesty and commitment and patriotism, that they could have taken a route like that, so that by now we would have had a new constitution. So that if you could remember, Momodou, during the 2020 discussion of the draft constitution in the parliament, I was one voice who was very loud to say, don't touch our constitution. All right. Because it's simple. The CRC was a committee set up by the executive and the cabinet, independent body. They went around Gambians at home and abroad, and they met, in fact, individually with National Assembly, with cabinet, political parties, right? And so, at the end of the day, they drafted something. So that draft, the president has no more authority or right to touch it again, because that draft is the opinion of Gambians about how they want the Gambia to be run. The parliament has no authority to touch that draft, because they already had their opinions expressed in that draft. So they should not add anything there or remove anything there, because if they could do that, then they could as well scrap the whole draft and write their own constitution. All right. So, but that was the point, that don't touch our constitution, send it to us as a draft, as a draft constitution in a referendum. Now, they refused to do that, and they subjected it to all those processes in the parliament, and in the end, it died. Now, if you want to repeat the same process again, then it means effectively you are saying that this attempt they are making now, it is also going to fail.
Yeah.
So meaning the country is not going to get another constitution again. So, but it is all deliberate.
Yeah. So, but Madi, the point here is, the elephant in the house is that two things or three things, I would say. The term limit. You know, that is the elephant in the house. Right? Are you getting me? Hello? Am I frozen? Sam, can you hear me? Sam.
In that draft constitution, okay, good. He's back on. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so what I was gonna say is that the elephant in the house here is this the term limit, number one. Number two, the power of the president, I mean, or the elected officials to be able to like appoint people of their choice, and also the accountability and transparency, the section that they took out. So the point here is that Madi, what I was gonna ask you about the term limit, because that is the key here. What is your thought process if the executive are not willing to, are not willing for the 2-term limit, that the 2-term that the president has served? How do we work that out?
Okay.
People told that's another hurdle. Let's say they agree with everything. Now, this 2-term, is come to a question, because it looks like, it will boil down to that.
Well, I think upfront I would say we the citizens should protest. We should not leave our country to the mercy for the interest of one person or few people. And so if I have the power, the means, I'll make all citizens protest from Banjul to Basse that they accept 2-term limit. Now, the thing is, though, the 2-term limit is there, in this thing I call Barrow Papers.
Yes,
the 2-term limit is there. Yes. So what they did rather, which is for me more serious, is that they failed to indicate when this 2-term limit kicks off. When does it start?
Exactly.
And that is the big problem, because already Barrow has served 2 terms. I mean, all things remaining the same. It's going to be there until 2026. So if we have 2-term limit in their draft, which is now being gazetted, is this draft saying the 2-term limit should start in 2017, or it is going to start at the time this constitution their draft is approved as a constitution? And if that approval is in 2025 or 2026, then it means Barrow has 2 extra terms to go for, because it means his current term, second term, is not counted, which he could claim. And this is the controversy we saw happen in Senegal in 2012 with Macky Sall, Abdoulaye Wade. And we saw it in 2019 in the case of Macky Sall, when a referendum was held and a new constitution came in 2019 or 2016, and he said, his first time will not count. We saw it in Cote d'Ivoire, all right, with in 2020 with Alassane Ouattara. But we saw it also in Guinea-Conakry with Alpha Condé, in 2020. That led to a coup against him, because he wanted to seek a 3rd term, claiming that his first term does not count because, the constitution came in during his second term, which he considers now to be his first term. Now, already Barrow's Minister of Information, Ismaila Ceesay, and some of his presidential advisors and surrogates say 2017 to 2021 is not a term. They call it a coalition term. Nothing can be more crazy than that, but that is the madness they are perpetuating around. All right, so that already it means we have a problem, because we'll have an interpretation problem as to when does the term limit start. The draft that they are putting in the Gazette right now, it only says the Constitution, when it comes into effect, it will mark the third republic. and the president in power at that time would be considered the first president of the Third Republic. Now, which is a meaningless, unnecessary thing to say anyway, because that is not in dispute. You know, if a new constitution comes, that means that is the start of that republic. All right. But the thing, as you said, the elephant in the room is, when does this time limit start? All right. And which is what they have failed to say. So meaning they are putting this country up for violence, for conflict in future, because we will get to that question someday. So it's a serious matter we need to think about. And this is all the more reason I think Gambians should reject these Barrow papers, should demand this process to stop, and we demand another process that I am advocating for, or some other process somebody may advocate, but you know, a process that at the end of the day gives power to Gambians to write their own constitution, send it to referendum, and they pass it. All right, or not. But it is for Gambians to do that. It is not for the executive or the parliament to come here and write a constitution for us.
Yeah. So what are you doing so far in your in pushing that idea forward? Are you meeting? Are you going to National Assembly, or are you doing through community groups? Or because your idea, I mean, the idea that you put forward is a great idea, but it needs to be embraced, and it needs political will behind for it to apply.
Yeah, I mean, it is not a necessarily a popular idea, because you know, Momodou, what I have come to realize, you know, even among our educated elite, clarity is a problem. Yes, you know, to understand basic things in their proper context is a problem. So that, unfortunately, and you know, I'm outraged, or I mean, stunned by it, that even our educated elite in the legal fraternity, in the civil society, in the political circles, they seem to believe that the process that is taking place right now is a right process. I mean, like, I would have thought they should know better.
Yeah.
All right. So, so what I'm doing, I'm talking to folks, lawyers, civil society people, politicians, including National Assembly members, to try to make them aware that the process we are taking is a process that is taking us nowhere. And, you know, and some seem to get the sense, what I'm trying to say, but some are rooted in the belief that, yes, what is happening is right. Because I told them, look, no constitution in the world, you can look at all national constitutions of this world, you will not see any national constitution that has a provision for the repeal of that constitution, or for the dissolution of the republic. No constitution would say that, because a constitution, when it is established, it establishes itself forever. All right. The institutional structures that it establishes, like the republic, you know, institutions like the cabinet, the parliament, and so on, they are established forever. All right. So the constitution does not anticipate to repeal itself, to kill itself. So that if the process we are taking right now on the basis of the 1997 constitution, it is basically to do that, to use the 1997 constitution to kill the 1997 constitution. That is overthrow of the constitution, which the constitution itself says is unconstitutional, is illegal. But that's the process we are taking. And so I have tried to explain to, like I said, all people that I think they should know better, who have the power and are in the place to make, you know, to make things happen. But unfortunately, most of these people believe, no, what we are doing is right. Not to mention, apart from the unconstitutionality of this process, the political setup is such that this process will not pass. Because just on the issue of the term limit, all right, the 2020 draft was killed because the NPP and Barrow folks do not want the term limit to start in December, all right, and all the rest thing, it should start in December. Now, if you come to 2024, they have created their own draft, which is not even saying when it should begin. So that for me, if I'm a parliamentarian, when we sit down, the first question I would say is, okay, when does the term limit begin? I mean, that is first and foremost number one question.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes. So that if we get to that question, that debate will never end. Because, I mean, if I'm a parliamentarian, I would insist that the term limit should start in 2017. But clearly, the NPP people in the parliament, like their cabinet, they are not going to count that. They will be thinking the term limit should start when this 2024 draft comes into force. So whether that is 2025 or 2026 or 2027, you know, it doesn't matter. And I don't think any parliamentarian should accept that. And so if you don't have the majority, like NPP, you don't have that absolute majority, then, you know, the others are going to vote against it. So how on earth are you going to get this passed? So meaning we are just going to go to the end of the road and go nowhere. And we stop, we are done. And that is just one controversial issue in their 2024 draft, because in their 2024 draft, I mean, it's a constitution or a draft created purposely to legalize dictatorship in this country and to legitimize, to protect corruption. I don't see how any reasonable human being, particularly any Gambian, reasonable Gambian, would accept the 2024, these Barrow papers. I mean, it's scandalous. The things they put, the provisions, you know, the clauses they put in those papers. I mean, I will not believe this is done by Gambians. Our own Gambians, brothers and sisters, you and I know, educated, would sit down and write something. I mean, I mean, of course, they did it, but I'm trying to figure out how on earth could they come to that kind of conclusion? Because you read that constitution, you know, okay, you want to create, effectively, you want to create a monarchy in this country. I think, I cannot believe it.
So, Sam could comment, but it looks like then there is no we are no close to.
We're at a standstill, right?
Yeah.
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 I mean, Mr. Jorbateh is right.
Yes.
Yeah, he is right. He is right. I agree, because in my mind, and the things that I've said myself from my WhatsApp audios, you know, are similar things. You know, number one, when you look at the term limit, like you said, Mrs. Sawaneh, is being a big elephant in the room here. The term limit, the way I look at the term limit is, you know, the coalition party has a term of 3 years, right? They had 3-year agreement that is what their term is. The president chose not to take that because he wants to follow the Constitution that says when a president is in place, they can serve up to 5 years as a mandate. So instead of a 3-year agreement, he went with a mandate. But when you pick the 5 years, that is a mandate, and is only called mandate in the Constitution, right? So if you take that mandate, in my mind, that should count as term 1, because you can't go and say, well, I'm going to take the mandate, but at the end of that mandate, you said that doesn't count. I'm going to start another one. Well, you can't eat your cake and have it. That's it. You're already taking a mandate, right? You already taking a mandate, and we call it a mandate, and the Constitution says it's a mandate. So all Gambian people know that was a mandate.
Yeah, Sam and Madi, quick question here. If at all Barrow only served 3 years and then stand again, and then would the term, you know, start from that 3 years moving forward?
No, because in my mind, no, the 3 years is not a mandate.
No, I'm saying
3 years was just
after the 3 years. After the 3 years, he came
Yeah.
down and then contested again and won an election. His term would have started from that after the end of that 3 years.
From that point, correct? Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct, because a Constitution that says the election was done, and if he wins, and he's starting a new mandate at that time.
Okay, so that's
the way I look at it.
Yeah.
So going back to the Constitution, like Madi said, I totally agree. I mean, this 2024 Constitution should not pass. It's bad for Gambia, really bad for our country. And in every Gambian citizen's mind, we all need to think about what is good for our country. Do we want one person to rule us for a number of years, past 10 years? The answer is, in most people's mind, in people that really are not selfish and want to look at Gambia in the future, and people that think about their own children and their grandchildren, they should say no. They should say no. We should not have anybody, whether it's in the Constitution or not. This is part of the reason why we are where we are today. We should be changing precedents and move on with the world in the 21st century, so that we can have that. We're going to have that one right person that's going to come in and do the right thing for the country, set us for a future development. Someone that is going to come in and do the right thing by really developing the country, change all the past things that change. Well, that needs to change, and move on in a new direction to bring progress in the Gambia. That's going to bring a good law enforcement in the Gambia. Somebody that's going to bring a development that's going to help the cost of living in the Gambia. Someone that is going to make Gambia self-sustainable, so we stop taking loans. That we are going to get to that person. But if we leave the same person there that did not do that from their first 5 years, and they did not do that in second term, why should we keep them in there? Why should we keep them there? That's the waste of time for Gambian people. Yeah, it's really wasting our time, and we don't have time for that. So, in my mind, the 2-term limit should stay there, should be there. And because it's there, and going back to the Constitution, I think what Madi said, that the Gambian people spoke their mind when the CRC went around in 2020 and got that 2020 draft. That 2020 draft is the voice of the Gambian people. That should have passed. If anything that needs to change there, all stakeholders need to be involved. Like Madi said, having that little commission, whether it's 100 or 200 people that represent the people, should be part of that with all stakeholders, and discuss what needs to be changed there, or what can be adjusted, adjust that one thing or two things, and pass it. And if that happens, once they do all of that, guess what? All of those representatives from different communities will go back to their people and tell them, we accepted the Constitution the way it is, the draft the way it is, but we made a couple of changes, and these are the changes. And when that happens, it will make it a lot easier for that Constitution to pass, because now people are aware of what is happening, what has happened, what has changed there, and they have their own representatives in there that were involved in the decision making on their behalf. Chances are it will pass. That's what will make a smooth transition from the 1997 Constitution to the new Constitution, because people are represented. It was the voice of the people, and that's what I believe in, and not just the president and his cabinet takes the Constitution, take it and make it the way they want it, and call it 2024 and then pass it. They don't have any right to do that.
Thank you.
It's gonna. And I said one thing also in my audios that I heard Madi said, if we get to that point, at some point, this is going to create a chaos in the country. Yeah. People are going to come out and say, no, we don't want this. We don't want this. It's going to create a chaos. This can cause the international world community to see Gambia as another problem area. It's going to create a chaos, just like what happened in Senegal in those days. It's going to create a chaos. And we don't want to do that. We don't want that. We don't want chaos. We want something that is good for Gambia. That's it.
Thank you. So we're gonna wrap up here. To give Madi the chance
Absolutely.
to really wrap it up. I know one thing that you said. When it comes to that point, people might take to the street and protest. To see that the 2-term stays and they is applicable within these 2 terms that the president served. I think that would be I think that would be an area. If that area could be resolved, I mean, I think probably the Constitution, certain things there could be resolved again. But remember, they're saying that they're gonna take this new one to the National Assembly. So, but what Madi also said, if it goes that way too, still, it will be coming from the president that is imposed towards the National Assembly, and still will not be like from the people. So the other route that Madi is, saying, take the 2020 constitution, have, a government body, governing body from different civil societies,
all stakeholders, yep,
stakeholders, and then have these people look at and come to an agreement, which could take time. And then that might not even be easy to achieve, because it's might be still difficult, because people have political interest. Even if you take people from, different background, they still have their own political interest there. So in the mix. So at the end of the day, it's gonna take time, and it will be difficult as well. So is it rather we have a constitution than we don't have any? Because at this point, if we drag it again with no constitution, let's say, God forbid, we never agree to anything, then that give blank checks to the president still, to lead to be a monarchy, or to be leading for the rest of his life. So I think at this point, this is really needs we should, we are sitting, but we should be standing. It really needs a lot of work, especially people on the ground, because this is our livelihood. If we don't solve this now, from now to 2026, I can guarantee you we are opening ourselves to another dictatorship or endless govern, that we don't want. But I will let Madi, to give us our final words. Thank you so much.
Yeah, let me give my final words. Yeah. So Momodou, I think first of all is to say what is happening in the Gambia, particularly the president, the government, the way they are acting, treating things, the way they are treating things, is purely and squarely because they are under no pressure. They face no consequence. The people on the ground, government citizens, our civil society, our political parties, we don't put any pressure on the government. We don't make them pay for their decisions or actions, good or bad. So because they don't feel any consequences, they are not held to account. So they do what they do, good or bad. And in most cases, very bad things. And that is why this country is in a mess. So the solution really at the end of the day is whether we have conscientious citizens, vibrant civil society organizations and political parties who are determined to create a better Gambia for the Gambia, who are just saying, we are not going to take any nonsense. We are not going to take anything for granted. We are not going to sit by silently and watching a few people waste our time and waste our lives. So that is our problem in this society, and this is why the politicians can do whatever they want to do. But the solution, this Constituent Assembly I'm talking about, in some sense, it is not a difficult thing to do if there is the political commitment, the political will. Mm-hmm. And any country we know that made a new constitution, particularly in these recent times, all right, we can refer to Kenya in 2010. They set up a structure like what I'm talking about. Right now, Trinidad and Tobago are in a constitution building process. And they are also trying to set up something like this. Because it is obvious that the executive and the parliament cannot write a constitution, particularly if they are influenced by more of selfish interests and party interests. And that has been demonstrated in the Gambia. And that is why you need to take this away from the parliament, the executive, and give it to this body. Now, of course, this body, people will come, they are coming from different interest groups, different areas. So if the Supreme Islamic Council is there, rest assured their perspective is Islam. If the Christian Council is there, their perspective is Christianity. If the persons with disabilities are there, their perspective is about diversity and inclusion, and so on. But that is why such a body is important, because as opposed to the parliament, which is composed of politicians and political parties, from political parties, these ones are not from political parties or politicians, they are from communities. And so they would need a lot of conversation, discussion among themselves in order to reach a consensus beyond and above their community interests and so on. And indeed, we can create a constitution that can serve the community interests of every community in the Gambia. I don't think I support a constitution that will harm any community in this country, whether it's religious community, cultural community, community of persons with disabilities, or women, or youth, or farmers, or teachers. No, we can create a constitution that can protect the rights and welfare of every community in this country. And that is very simple to do. But that would require a certain level of political commitment, a political will. And that is the issue that we have. So I thank you guys for this conversation. I wish I could go further on this. But then we must agree, indeed, our country is at a crossroads. I think once again, what is being demonstrated is we are beset by, poor leadership, not just from the government, but poor leadership from our political parties, poor leadership from our civil society, poor leadership from our, religious leaders, our community leaders. So the country is, really constrained by poor leadership across the board, and which is very sad and very difficult, because it raises the question as to how are we now going to get solution when, the leadership required is not there. So that is the issue we have. But I thank you. I mean, this is part of the ways to solve this problem, to have a conversation about it. And I look forward to coming over on this platform once again.
Yeah,
so thank
you. We have Famara. Let him just throw one word, because he's also part of our co-host. Famara, we're about to close, but you can just throw one more word or a few words for our guest here, Madi.
Yes, Madi, thank you so much. Sorry, I come late. I was at work, so thank you so much for coming. You're doing a great job, and you're one of the people that I look up to. And then I follow you every time, and then all I can say is keep it up. You're doing a great job, and then thank you so much for speaking up for everybody.
Thank you.
I shared the same environmental group with you, and I see that even yesterday you were mentioning about this proposed degazettement of Buko Nature Reserve, which government actually gave us a turnaround yesterday. So thank you so much for everything you do, and then we'll look forward to catching up next time. Hopefully, I'll have time to join you at that time. Thank you so much for everything you do.
Definitely, we will definitely have you here more often, Madi.
Thank you.
Because this platform is for that, and then we definitely want to sensitize and then have our citizens empowered. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Madi. Thank you. We really appreciate you and appreciate your time. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yep.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye, guys. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.